So I'm looking at the book. It's called General Semantics: An Outline Survey by Kenneth G. Johnson. And I thought a good place to start here would be this poem from the Portuguese poet Ferdinando Pessoa. And Pessoa, he writes, "I saw that there is no nature, that nature does not exist, that there are mountains, valleys, plains, that there are trees, flowers, grasses, but there's not a whole to which this belongs, that any real and true connection is a disease of our ideas. Nature is parts without a whole. This perhaps is that mystery they speak of." I think that's a wonderful way to capture part of the paradox of nature and of our own relationship to nature. The expression, nature is parts without a whole. Is it really the case that nature is parts without a whole? Could it be that nature is, or it seemed to be, and had historically been, evolutionarily been, parts without a whole until self-conscious beings emerged? Somehow when self-conscious beings emerged, there was a newfound whole that could imagine the whole of everything. Now, a different way to cut at this would be to say, is it really true that nature is parts without a whole? Are ideas a kind of disease? Are relations a kind of disease? There's a wonderful passage in William James's Essays in Radical Empiricism where he's talking about how relations between things are as real as the things. And he says, he looks up in the sky and he sees the Big Dipper. And looking up at the Big Dipper, at first he asks himself, why do I see the Big Dipper in the sky? Is it because the constellation there is sort of calls forward my recognition of it? Is it a pre-given form in the sky that I recognized? And then he thinks, no, that can't be really it. He says, instead, could it be that I'm looking toward the sky with an image of things we already have? So because I have spoons and because I have ladles, I was able to see that form that looks like a form up in the sky, but only because I already have those concrete relations around me. And then he steps back and he thinks, wait a second, none of this, neither of those are going to be sufficient, because the particular constellation that we here from our position on this planet take to be the Big Dipper, from a different planet, those wouldn't even be aligned the way they seem to be aligned given the perspective that comes from being a resident on this planet. And I think James's notion here of radical empiricism, of recognizing that relations between things are as real as the things, might be a way of, I guess, moving into that discussion of, is nature in fact parts without a whole, or could it be, as soon as life emerges, there always is some sense of the whole? By the time you get to self-conscious beings, we can imagine that absolute whole of all wholes, the ultimate edge of the universe. I mean, I can imagine the universe, it goes all the way to the edge of the universe, and when we get to the very edge, we say, well, what's on the other side of that? There's always this question of what's on the other side of that, or what started the Big Bang, and then what started the thing that started the Big Bang. It's this, what was God doing before he invented the universe? It's all these kinds of questions. I think it's very similar to the fact that it seems as if, I don't think it's true, obviously. I think it's ill-advised to believe this, but I think there is a deep sense in which it feels like the universe kind of began with our birth. The reason it feels like the universe began with our birth is because we are that part of nature which turns the parts of nature into a whole. Each person is like a gravitational center. It's as if each of us is a localized manifestation of a gravitational center that then turns all of the parts into a whole according to that gravitational center. And so the universe It's not that the universe doesn't have a whole, or maybe, no, let's stick with the poet, right? The poet says, nature is parts without a whole. Yes, it's parts with many holes. It has as many holes as there are people who put into a totality of relations all of the different objects into a new kind of arrangement given their very being.